Hi, fellow coaches. Thank you for joining me today. This is my session. It's called Coaching into Different Types of Goals. My name is Samantha Shields, and I am an instructional coach in Round Rock ISD. And my goal has always been to be able to coach teachers, but also coach coaches and share the knowledge that I develop along my journey and be able to share that with each other and grow each other's expertise. And so I have right here my little logo, Confessions of a Coachaholic. I am starting my own coaching blog so that I can post things for teachers and post things for coaches to be able to use. And so if you want to go ahead and click that, you can join my mailing list so that you can be aware of when I post. And then you can also like the Facebook page so we can grow a community of coaches. Before I begin and show you the learning targets that I set out for you today for our session, I want to give you a background story of what brought me to you today. So when I knew I wanted to become an instructional coach, I got my hands on anything I could read about it. I was hearing names, Jim Knight, Diane Sweeney, Marzano, Aguilar, Barkley, like all those names. I was reading books. And so as I was becoming a coach and reading more and more, I started developing questions, and I had to develop, like, there were just areas where I was wondering if I'm doing things right. And so some of those areas that I had questions and wonderings were can I use, do I have to use one type of coaching model based on the different experts in the field? If I use one such model, do the goals I set with teachers have to look just like that? I wondered, were standard-based goals all that I could set with teachers? When I first started out as a coach, that was what I was told. That's the kind of coaching we do. And so then I felt like, I was like, wait a second, how do I form goals for these other areas that teachers want to work on? And then I was always wondering if I was writing those goals correctly. Am I doing this whole coaching thing correctly? And so on my quest to kind of figure out these answers is I tried to synthesize all that research and theories that I was gathering to better understand it and to kind of create my own coach, who I am, by synthesizing all that information. And so, here I am today. I submitted the proposal to be able to share that with you. And so coaching goals, coaching cycle goals is my bread and butter. It's the area that I have spent so much of my time trying to understand and grapple with. And so I wanted to share that with you today. So by the end of the session, you would have identified a set of prerequisite engagement goals that precede academic standards-based goals. And you may be wondering what all that means. And so in my head, I've put together some of the research that I found, and I feel like there are certain things that as children need to be able to do when we're coaching with teachers before they can have a true opportunity to be successful with standards-based goals. By the end of the session, you would have identified examples of goals for each kind of prerequisite engagement goal. As a coach, when I'm trying to sculpt out these goals that teachers and I think of, one thing I had trouble with was articulating it and putting it on paper. What would that look like? How does that look like written? Am I doing it right? And so as a coach, I wanted to walk away with, but I also want you to walk away with examples for each of these types of goals so that you kind of have a bank to refer to and use to guide your work. By the end of this session, you would have generated examples of ways to measure success for each kind of goal. Being able to have a data tracking tool and knowing how you're going to track success is tricky, right? And so I want you to walk away again with a bank of ideas. And number 4, you would have generated examples of teaching strategies to coach into for each kind of goal. So you're going to know what these goals are. And this thinking process that I've kind of come to, you're going to walk away with examples of these goals, walk away with examples of ways to measure success for each kind of goal, and a teaching strategy that you can pair with the teacher in order to accomplish that goal. And so let's get started. So to start out, let's have a virtual discussion, and you will use Flipgrid for this. And so if you're unfamiliar with Flipgrid, it is an online collaborative tool where you can record yourself for about a 2-minute recording. I think it's how I have it set. answering this question, and then you can listen and watch other participants' answers, and you can actually respond using a video as well to them. And so use this as a place to collaborate. And so I want you to think back to when you first started out as an instructional coach. What initial knowledge and understanding related to the role of coaching did you need to gain in order to be successful? Let that simmer for a second. What initial knowledge and understanding related to the role of coaching did you need to gain in order to be successful? So then you'll go to our Flipgrid, and this link is also in your participant handouts, coaching into different types of goals. Think back like Pooh here. And again, you're going to answer the question of what were those initial knowledge and understandings related to the role of coaching that you needed to gain in order to be successful. And then you can click this green little thing here, and you can record your thoughts and what you needed to understand about the coaching role when you first started out. And you can also reply to others. So at this time, pause your recording and please engage in our collaborative discussion. Welcome back from your virtual talk. And what I want to do right now is I want to talk to you about, yes, you are seeing a blank slide, but I promise something's about to come up. You see, no matter how long we have been coaches, we all are here today for the same reason, right? We want to grow as a coach, but we also are trying to gain some understanding, right? And so when we are first becoming a coach, one of the first things we have to really learn about ourselves and the role is our why. What's our why and what's our purpose? Why do you want to be a coach? Why are you leaving that classroom? What is that impact that you want to have in education? And so that's one of the first things that we decide as a coach when we're leaving. We also think about our philosophy. You know, you have your teaching philosophy and your beliefs about teaching. What are your beliefs and philosophies about coaching? When I came in as a coach, I had seen various coaches and I had learned things that I loved in a coach and I had learned things that I wanted to do different in a coach. And so I had my philosophy when I was becoming a coach. We also, you know, have to decide the type of coach you want to be. You have behavior coaches, you have literacy coaches, you have sports coaches. So when you're first thinking about your role, you have to decide, do you want to be an instructional coach, a cognitive coach, an executive coach, a coactive coach, or even a sports coach? And a lot of those I got from Jim Knight's research. And so you can look into those as well. Once we know the type of coach that we want to be, you have to decide, how are you going to be approaching people? How are you going to have your coaching conversations? Do you want to be somebody who's very directive with people? And in some circumstances, I'm sure you have to be. Do you want to be somebody who's very dialogical, who has conversations, who's very back and forth with a teacher? Or do you want to be a facilitative coach? So again, these are from Jim Knight's research, that you decide who you want to be when you're interacting with adults. You think about your impact here, guys, and where do you want your impact to be? You know, do you want to impact student learning? Are you trying to impact teacher learning and growth? Are you trying to impact both? You really want to understand where your impact is going to be and how you're going to get there. And so you might be doing more student-centered coaching, or student-focused coaching. You might be doing more teacher-centered coaching. It depends on your environment, your coaching experience, however you're going about it. From there, this is what brings us to here today. What type of goal are you going to be setting? So once you know your impact, once you know how you're approaching people and your philosophies, what are those types of goals that you're going to be working with teachers on in your coaching work? You know, I consider all of these as stepping stones or self-identification steps to becoming an instructional coach. And so these are some of the areas that we grow in first before we can become the coach we are. And so this is like my little puzzle that I constructed of becoming, you know, a coach. And so once all of those pieces come together, you know, I feel that helps us become a well-balanced and well-informed instructional coach who can have an impact in education. And so that brings me to today, focus with you on the types of goals within our coaching work. Okay, so here's my little classroom that I made for you, and I'm going to use a little analogy to kind of get you thinking with how my brain is processing this learning for today. And so, as an instructional coach, I've pondered and continuously wondered if I've been writing these goals correctly, because they are the forefront of the work that I do with teachers. Is there a right or is there a wrong way to writing these goals? Should goals only focus on academics or standards-based in order to impact student learning? Are the goals of my work impacting students, or is it impacting teacher practice more? Like, I was wondering all of these things. Can coaches coach towards teacher-centered needs rather than student-focused needs and still have an impact on student learning? These were some of the questions that are constantly going through my mind and that I was stuck on. And so those answers cannot be found just in a book, right? It's who you are and what you want as a coach. And so through my research and curiosities as an instructional coach, I've come to believe that knowing the types of goals that our work typically focuses on, and being able to decipher between the type of goals that we are setting with teachers helps us as coaches better understand the work that we're doing. And so it helps us to determine the point of where our impact rests, and it helps us determine the areas that we as coaches are coaching into within our work and where our support lies more. And so within my classroom here, you see in my head, I've been trying to dig into these goals of my previous cycles and group them somehow so that I can understand what I'm coaching into more in a more absolute way. I really, really was trying to understand my work. And so I picture this idea of understanding my goals like a classroom library that you see in front of you. See, this is the primary K through 1 teacher within me that's coming out. So as a classroom teacher, you have a classroom library. Let's think of this library as our coaching work. So classroom library is your coaching work, okay? And within your library, you have many books. Okay, we're gonna think of these books as your coaching goals. So as you coach teachers, you start to create this bank of coaching goals that you set with them, right? Okay. But like most teachers, right, in the beginning of the year and throughout the year, you're constantly wanting to organize your classroom books. Remember, your classroom books are like your classroom goals, okay? So you want to organize these books into buckets. So let's think about categorizing your, these are like categorizing your goals, right? And so you want to put your books in these buckets by genre or type. So what I'm trying to get you to do is get your different goals and categorize those by type, okay? And why would we want to do this? Why does a teacher want to organize their library? Well, you want them to be readily available to you, right? Whenever you need to pick a book for a mini lesson or you want your students to go book shopping, you want to be able to readily find them. And so think about that. You want to organize your coaching goals so that you can better understand what kind of coaching goals you have in your work, okay? So that's how I've been kind of messing with this in my head and trying to understand why I want to organize my goals, because I want to understand them and be able to look at them and have them available to me when I want to learn what I'm doing more, right? I can dive into what I've done with my teachers more and understand my work. So this brings me to our big idea of today, prerequisite goals. And so what I've come to visualize and understand is that there are some goals and some kind of engagements that precede others. These goals can precede the academic goals. And so I envision a set of goals where students need to be successful before they can be successful with standards-based goals. And they kind of build on each other. So I have here behavioral engagement goals, cognitive engagement goals, social emotional engagement goals, and then you get to your standards-based goals. And so with each of these, as they build on top of each other, we're equipping our students and teachers with everything they need in order to be able to produce those learning outcomes that we want for those academics. And so each of these I'm going to get into here in a second, but I wanted you to see that there are goals that kids need to have. There are engagements that students need to have to be successful in school before they can really be successful academically. Same for us as teachers. Okay, So what if, I want you to walk with me for a second. What if when we are goal setting with teachers, we use a set of success criteria and questions to know if students are ready and equipped with what they need to do those standards-based goals. So for each of these engagement goals, there's a success criteria, some questions that I've come up with that really can help us with teachers when we're having that goal setting conversation to see if our students are ready, right? And so think about this. You sit with a teacher and she's like, okay, I want to do a goal for this unit on XYZ standard. Okay, great. So let's kind of sit and talk about this. You know, during this time of the day, let's pretend it's their reading time of the day. Typically during your reading time of the day, are students generally doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are students generally on task? Do student disruptions or disruptive behaviors intervene in the delivery of classroom instruction? Are there a variety of students engaging in the whole group, small group, or partner discussions? And so right here as a coach, we're trying to see, when that time comes when we're working on this standards-based goal, are our students going to be behaviorally okay? Do we need to work on anything during that time that could be conflicting with their learning? From there, we go into cognitive engagement. So cognitive engagement is generally your students are doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Like they're learning what they're supposed to be learning. They're obtaining that knowledge and outcomes that you want them to. And so you don't want students who are just kind of sitting there where you're wondering, are they listening to me? Are they learning this? So these are just, are my students authentically engaged during this time? So are students generally compliant and engaged? Do students generally know the intended learning outcomes for their learning? Like, can they tell you what they were supposed to be learning? Does formative assessment data indicate to you that the students are grasping the learning for the lesson? So what if during that time you're like, you know, it never really seems to me like they're really paying attention and that they're engaged? Well, let's look into that. Maybe we need to do some work in that coaching. We need to do some coaching work there together before we can focus on the standards to just kind of tighten everything up. Social emotional engagement goals, I've also just heard these referred to as emotional goals or affective goals. So this one's not necessarily during a certain time. This is just your class. Does the class or individuals within the class feel connected with and have relationships at school? Do they feel safe while at school? And do they feel cared about at school? Do they feel like they belong? Because if a kid is not emotionally engaged, they may not be able to be fully invested in that learning process. And so do we need to do some work with some students in that area to help them be successful? And so then it brings me to standards-based, you know, so, okay, we wanting to set a goal for this unit and we've checked and we've said, okay, your kids are generally behavioral engagement is good during that time. Their cognitive engagement is good during that time, and socially, emotionally, you don't have any concerns of your students. Okay. I think that would give them the overall ability to be successful during that work. And so here are some questions for that I kind of have in my head. Are there standards to be taught that students historically have struggled with in the past? So looking at that unit, is there anything that they historically struggle with that we could work on? Are there essential standards to be taught that have been determined for your grade level? So if your school does the work of determining priority standards and essential standards, do you have any of those coming up in that unit that are really important that we could coach into together for student success? Is there a standard to be taught in that unit that you as a teacher have historically struggled with in the past and that you want better results with? Is there something we can partner on together for better student outcome on that? And so, you know, it's our job as a coach to partner with the classroom teacher and determine where the need is and the steps that it will take for our students to get there. But no matter what, the goal is always that of which the teacher chooses. They always have that choice. They have that autonomy, and they need to be the ones to decide what it is and what the adjustments need to be along the way if it's not working for them versus us just telling them the goal. And so, but I mean, what if you as a coach could use these types of questions to check for understanding, to see if students are well equipped with the other engagements, those prerequisite engagements that they need. Doing this in my coaching practice has really helped me to have better coaching work with teachers in classrooms as well. Oops. So I'm gonna go back here for a second. So I don't want to miss the obvious here, because as a coach, let's be real. There are times when a teacher comes to you and they want you to do work with them that is strictly focused on them, teacher focused, right? And so, and that's where I was like battling. I'm like, oh, if I do those teacher focused goals, am I a horrible coach? I'm not focusing on student engagement. I'm not focusing on academics. It kind of would catch me off guard. I'm like, am I supposed to do this? And so there are times where you're going to have to help teachers coach. They want your support when it comes to their practice, where it's not directly impacting student learning, but in the end, at some point, it will impact student learning, because if a teacher is better in their practice, they're better able to serve their students, right? And so that's the reality. A teacher will come to you and want coaching support to better their practice. Maybe it's implementing a program or a routine or strategy or something that the district is pushing out. Maybe they just need help with basic pedagogy as a teacher and teaching knowledge. And so, so I've heard of these goals referred to as teacher focused goals. I've heard this all referred to as implementational support goals. So let me walk you through these. And so the first one here is implementational support. So, you know, there's a new phonics kit, there's a new resource. The teacher's like, I just need you to help me to put this in practice, right? And so that would be your implementational support. So you could be working with a teacher with a goal around that. We generally have a bunch of new teachers that come in, and with being a new teacher, there's supports in itself that they need, like just the nuts and bolts of teaching. And so you might have goals with them set around that. You might have behavior management supports with teachers. And then you might need planning support. Teachers might come to you and say, I just need help with you planning and helping me walk through this unit and knowing what I'm doing. So those are some things. There's a bunch of other things that teachers might need your support with, but those are areas that teachers also need support. And so here's some success criteria I've come up with in my little head for that. So a teacher comes to you to request coaching that is more teacher focused. How are you feeling about the implementation of XYZ, and how will coaching in this area impact student learning? So if they want you to help with a resource, how is that going to help with student learning? As a new teacher, there are many things to learn and know. What is the one thing that you're needing support with right now that's keeping you up at night? So what is that one thing that that new teacher needs right now that you can coach them on? And what part of the planning process do you begin to struggle with? And how will coaching in this area impact student learning? Do they really need help with formative assessment? And you just coaching them through what it is and what it looks like? You know, that's where you can come in. And again, the goal is always the teacher's choice. And so one little trick I've learned along the way is, if we do have a teacher focused goal, you know, once the teacher becomes comfortable with that area, then you can start as a coach to kind of see if y'all can turn that goal a little bit so it is more focused on students, or maybe y'all use a measure you somehow measure the outcomes with student learning. And so there's ways you can put a twist on it so that it's still having an impact on student learning. Okay, and so what I have for you here is, in my head, I have, if we know the different type of engagement goals or prerequisite goals that our students need in order to be fully successful with their standards, and we have some success criteria to kind of guide us through that. And as a coach, you know, if you want to have impact on students or impact on teachers, I feel like once we have all of those things in place, that helps us have a better, deeper understanding of our work. And so that's how all of that comes together. That helps me as a coach better understand the work I'm doing. So in a moment, you are going to pause this recording and engage in some of the work that we have talked about so far. I want you to take a minute to reflect on your current or past coaching work. Think back to the coaching cycles or informal coaching work that you've engaged in with teachers and teams. What were some goals you wrote out when you worked with teachers? You may have to look at some of your old electronic files or just kind of generically think in your head. So think, what were some of those goals that you worked with teachers on? Then I want you to write a few of those past goals down on sticky notes or torn pieces of paper. So you want one goal on each piece of paper. I want you to look at those goals, and I want you to reflect and ask yourself, do you see any trends in the types of goals that you mainly work on with teachers? Think back to those cycles and reflect if any of those were like our needed other prerequisite engagements before that could have hindered why students may not have had the outcomes y'all wanted. Is there a certain type of goal that you as a coach naturally gravitate to when you work with teachers? From there, I want you to try to sort your goals into teacher focused and student focused. So right here, I want you to think like you're trying to decipher what is your impact mainly. Do you typically do teacher focused goals or student focused goals? Because that'll kind of tell you where your impact has generally rested. From there, I want you to try to sort them again. But that time, I want you to sort them by, can you group them? Pretending like this is your library, can you group them into buckets or piles by type? Think about the goals that I just showed you. Do you typically do more implementational support? Do your goals that you have right there, do you have more that rest in the social emotional part or behavioral engagement part? So just kind of sort them and see where your goals typically are. And then that brings me to our next part here. During my research, again, I read countless books when it came to coaching, but there was a couple of pieces that I stumbled upon that really caught my attention. Again, I started mainly doing Sweeney's student-centered coaching model. That's the model that I was told I had to implement at that time in my coaching. And so for me, I was like, oh my God, I can only do standards-based goals, but there's all these other things that teachers need work on. But how do I always make it tie to a standard? That I felt like I was pigeonholed, right? Like I was like, everything cannot just connect to a standard. Like I couldn't figure it out. And so one day I was Googling and I came upon this, this chart here. It was from 2017. It was Diane Sweeney's Student-Centered Coaching Toolkit. She had it, it was linked on her website, and I found it, and within it there was this chart, and it has standards-based goals, and it gave me a couple of examples. But then I also saw that she had engagement goals and behavior goals here. And so I was like, aha, Sweeney's model does do other things besides standards-based goals that I had thought originally, right? And so I read that, and that sparked some interest. So that was my first indicator. I was like, okay, there is more to just coaching than just standards-based goals, okay? So there's that. And then I started going to the Jim Knight Coaching Institute at Region 13. And so it was a series of sessions. And so I met Jim at a few of them, and then Anne was there, and she presented quite a bit as well for him. And so when we were there, I would pick Anne's brain, I would pick Jim's brain about these goals. And so I was just like fixated on the goals. And so within his work, we would talk about it. I started emailing him, and I had some questions. And then one day he emailed me this chart that he was working on for an upcoming article that was going to be in the Learning Professional. And it had the chart that you see here. And he was showing me that there's different types of goals. There's different ways to measure it, and then strategies. And that right there was a whole other indicator for me. And y'all, that just blew my mind. Everything was coming together. All this wondering that my brain was stuck with was finally blown. And I was like, okay, I'm on to something. There are so many different types of goals I could be writing with these teachers. So now, I want you to have that same moment. I want you to have that aha moment of your mind being blown too, and give you the chance to read these things. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is, in a second, you're going to pause the video again. So you've paused it to sort your goals, and now you're going to pause it again because I want you to do some reading. So the first thing I want you to do is, I want you to read the article that I found from the Learning Professional by Jim Knight. It's Students on the Margins, Coaching into Engagement. And then I want you to look at the chart from Diane Sweeney's Student-Centered Coaching Toolkit that I found on her website. I want you to read those and take it all in. And then that'll help solidify some of the talk that we've had today. Then, once you've done that, I want you to go to our Flipgrid. and that I've put together for us, coaching into different types of goals. And so here's my little cat guy, he's reading, right? So after reading the Jim Knight article and looking over the coaching goals chart in Diane Sweeney's Student-Centered Coaching Toolkit, I want you to come back and make a brief video to authentically share your takeaways, your aha moments, and any questions or wonderings that you still have. So what caught your eye? What were you wondering about? What are some of the areas that you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't think about it like that? Because when I read those two things, when I looked at that chart and I read his article, my mind was seriously blown. So then come again, post your response, quick little authentic engagement, just show me what you learned from it, what you liked, aha moments, and then respond to some of your peers as well. Okay, and so there, go ahead and pause the video now and then come back when you are done. So again, up first, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about these goals and what would go, examples that could go into this goal. So up first, we have behavioral engagement goals. Move that over here. And when you're thinking of behavioral engagement goals, this is the types of goals you might have written on students being on task. You might have goals written where, to determine if students are doing what they're supposed to be doing, if there's disruptive behavior, or just making sure students are participating and answering questions. So those might be some areas that you have goals written about for engagement goals. Then you have your cognitive engagement goals. And those are where, are students experiencing the thinking that's intended for them? Are they learning what's intended for them? Are they authentically engaged in the learning, or are they just kind of sitting there? So those are some things you might write goals kind of around those areas. For social emotional goals, or you might have goals written around if students are feeling safe, if students are feeling cared for, if they feel like they have relationships when they come to school with others, if they feel like they belong here. You know, and so we really want to make sure that students feel that way. And then you have your standards-based goals. These are areas that you might coach into that are derived from a standard, or they're derived from some other academic skill. So you're going to try and tie it to a standard, but it might be around another skill. And so my thought process here is that whenever we have understanding of if our students are behaviorally engaged, cognitively engaged, emotionally engaged, then our kids have every opportunity to be successful with their standards-based goals. And, you know, we really want our students to have that understanding. And so if students are able and equipped with all of those prerequisite engagements, they are able to be successful at their learning outcomes. And so now is the time where we get to come together and really learn from each other. Again, I wanted y'all to be able to walk away with something tangible to take with you. I wanted you to be able to be like, okay, these are the different types of goals that I might set. Here are examples of how they might be written or areas that I might coach into. Here's an example of how I can measure success. And here's an example of a teaching strategy that I can use for that goal. And so what I put together is a Trello for you. If you've never heard of Trello, it's amazing. It's like it gives each of you an opportunity to have a card, and then you can upload several things within it. And so I'll show you here in a second. And so what you're going to do is you're going to click on the icon that I have there for you. So once you click it, it invites you to our Coaching into Different Types of Goals Trello. And so once you're in here, under each type of goal, engagement goal, I have put the first card. So when you click this, it contains a forced copy of the document for you to use. And so here, I want you to use this template so that you can kind of generate examples of behavioral type of engagements. So you'll click it, you will make a copy for yourself. And then once you have your copy, you can title it and then put your name behind it. And this is where I want you to think, what's an example type of engagement goal that you could write with teachers that's based on the measure of, are they on task? And then what is an example of a data collection tool that you could use, a strategy that could go with that, and any other notes you need. What's a behavioral engagement goal that you could write with teachers that's about instructional time and making sure that you're using your instructional minutes? What's an engagement goal that you could write with teachers about the number of students responding to questions or participating? And what kind of goal could you write with teachers on coaching about disruptions and disruptive behaviors? So this is a bank. And once you have put a couple of examples in yourself, then I want you to go back to our Trello, and then you are going to create a card with your name here, and then you can upload that file there so that there's a bank where we can all see some ideas that you came up with and add those to ours. And so therefore we would all kind of have these ideas from each other of some type of goals. And you would do that same thing for each type of goal. And then we would all have each other's work to work off of. You could put your contact information in there, your email address, so in case people have questions and they want to ask you anything, because I know I would love to learn from y'all and still be able to collaborate as well. And that really wraps up what I intended for you today. You know, I want you to spend some time in that Trello and do some of that thinking and post it so each other can learn from it. And I really hope that this sparks some interest for you when it comes to the types of goals that you're writing with teachers and the impact that you're having with the work that you do with teachers, because it really has made a difference in my practice and the outcomes that we have with our students. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't mind filling out my own little survey that I have here. I really would love to know what learning you got from today that you enjoyed. If you have any feedback for me going forward, whenever I am doing more presentations, especially virtual presentations, any support you could offer there. This is an AEIOU evaluation survey that I got from one of the Jim Knight Institute's sessions, and I really liked it. Very simple. And it also, I added here, any feedback you'd like to give me, again, would be greatly appreciated. I have really enjoyed being with you today and having the opportunity to share with you this learning and this idea that I've stumbled upon through my journey. And I really hope that it sparks some interest within you as well and helps you grow as a coach. I have included my contact information here for you. So if you want to reach out, if you need any support, resources, or anything, please do. I also have the link to my coach's Confessions of a Coachaholic website. If you want to join my blog, I'm establishing it. It's still new. Subscribe to it so that you can be made aware if I post anything for teachers or coaches, so that we can grow and learn from each other. Here are some things that I've referenced. The links to these would be in your your participant handout, so that you again still have the students on the margin article, Diane Sweeney's article, or anything else you need. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate it, and I've enjoyed being with you. Thank you.